here to do cornerbacks. Fairly interesting class. I think this cornerbacks, I think edge, I mean wide receivers too, but cornerbacks and edge defenders, apparently everyone, the consensus is that's a deep class. And I kind of got that feeling here too. It was tough to rank some of these guys. And heck, there's like 5-6 guys where I go, man, like this guy's a first round talent. Did you feel the same way looking at them as well before we dive into it?
Yeah, I think this is a really deep cornerback class. I fully expect at least 5 to go in the first round. I'd be pretty surprised if less than that was to be going in the first round because I think there's just a lot of high end talent in this year's class.
Yeah. Alrighty, so let's just get right into it. I'm trying to remember. Regardless, I'll let John go first. I think this time. So John, if you want to start from, we'll go. Sneak draft. You can go first with number 5. Who is your number 5 cornerback prospect for the 2022 NFL draft class?
Yeah, so my number 5 is, and forgive me if I pronounce his name wrong, Cair Elam out of Florida. He's about 6'1", so he's got some really good size. Really solid corner, honestly. He played in the SEC, and I think that's a really big benefit because the SEC tends to pump out a lot of high-end talent at wide receiver. I mean, we know that out of Alabama, they got Jamison Williams, John Mechie, both coming out in the draft, both going to be probably drafted in the first 3 rounds. Even Williams probably, he has a chance to be the first receiver taken off the board. So Elam has a lot of great experience against a lot of top receivers, Traylon Burks as well in the SEC. So, he has a lot of great tape against a lot of elite receivers. And so, yeah, I think that he's a great corner. The biggest problem for me is he feels a little more scheme dependent. He's going to be great in zone, great at press, but I do have a little bit of worry about his ability in man coverage. But overall, I think he's a really great outside corner. I don't view him ever going really into the slot. I think that he has the versatility to where he can, mix it up and get in there. But for the most part, due to his size, due to, his ability to press receivers on the outside, that's really where he's going to shine. And if you allow him to go in the slot, I don't think that his skills are as useful there because, like I said, not as good at man coverage. And I think that his main strength is, his strength being, on the outside and pressing people. So, yeah, I like Cair Elam, but overall, I just think that he's not as versatile enough as some of the other guys that I put in front of him. So that is why he is my number 5. What about you?
I'm starting off with one of the hotter names, and I didn't mean to do this. This is how I see them. Go with Mr. Stingley Jr. from LSU. He's my number 5 cornerback. We've talked about this off air. But the good things. I mean, everyone, whether it's good or bad, everyone always mentions, and it's worthy of mentioning, that his freshman year, the national championship year, he was balling. Like he's a high recruit, and the fact that he was able to basically be a starter his freshman year and play at the level he did, it makes things confusing because then the next 2 years, maybe it's a combination of injury, but even when he was out there fully healthy, or presumably fully healthy, you just didn't see the same guy. And maybe he got a little bit more exposed. Maybe and I don't want to call his character into question. I don't know the guy. I don't know the kid. Don't know what he went through. So I'm not going to win these people that say dog on him for this. I'm just saying it's speculation. Consistency was an issue. I mean, he was getting he was getting beat by receivers that I'm like, he's better than this guy. Like he showed it last year that he was locking up guys way better than this person, but this guy is beating him on this route, and it's not like he would maybe have a game or two there too. It was concerning, especially second and third year, that it wasn't even like, it was maybe like a handful of plays where he would we would see the freshman year Stingley, like he'd see him really pop and lock a guy down or make a play, but other than that, like I said, I don't want to make this be all about negatives, but the reason he's at 5, because it sounds like I'm dogging on the guy, is he could be elite. He could easily be the best cornerback of this class, but concerns about, I know, and I'm not, but not even just tackling, but chasing after guys in the play. So it gives up on a lot of plays, or just kind of stands there, and then even like I said, got beat by guys lesser than I would say him, and I think that's he would get sloppy with technique and effort, but he does have he has great fluidity in his movement. He could be a great man-to-man corner, great zone corner. He has the size and ability. It's going to be a big question of where he goes, and I guess what his mentality is going to be. Maybe it's changed. It seems like he's maybe he'll being in the NFL, just being around better people, like that freshman year at LSU. Maybe that will help him stay motivated and elevate his game. It's happened. We've seen plenty of guys in college football ball out their freshman year, maybe take a year off, or maybe not do so well a year or two, and then they come into the NFL, and like Chris Jones, who his motor was questioned, but he worked out. But there are also stories on the other end where high guys who were previously high recruits didn't work out in the NFL. Malik McDowell, Robert Nkemdiche. So we'll see what happens. But he's just too talented raw wise for me to leave him, to not put him in the top 5. I could see him going. I think he's more of a second round guy just in terms of overall. But it wouldn't shock me if a team like the Chiefs or like the Bills, a team that has a pretty good culture in place, takes a shot on him in round 1 to, just to see if they could bring out that freshman year, Derek Stingley. So he's my number 5 cornerback. But yeah, it was real tough. I know you saw. So that's my number 5. My number 4 is going to be Mr. Andrew Booth out of Clemson. To comp him, remind me a lot of my guy Eric Stokes, for my Packers. On the bigger side of corners, not like huge, but tall, lanky corner. Has probably, if not the best, one of the best speed and acceleration of the draft class. Remind me too of like a Dante Jackson, where there would be times because he's so fast that he would still be backpedaling, and he would be backpedaling while the receivers just about even with him. And then as most quarterbacks go, oh man, like that, he's still backpedaling. Like this is an easy lob. They lob it, then he turns on the jets, and all of a sudden, the guy the receiver that they thought was going to burn him did not burn him. He gets to the ball first or makes a play. Put in a lot of tough spots in Clemson, but I think that helped because he's a good tough tackler. He's great in zone. I think he could be solid in man as a boundary type corner. I don't think he doesn't have great agility. It's solid, but I don't think it's great. He's not going to be lining up in the slot or against some of the more route runner, the Michael Thomases of the world, with those guys that are more just stopping on a dime and such. So, yeah, I think he's going to be a very good. He could be a solid number 1 corner, but I think if you have like a star. For some, I don't know. I'm not going to project him anywhere, but he could. If at worst, he's a very good number 2. Like I said, like an Eric Stokes, or I'm blanking on other guys, but he could be a solid number 1 if you need him to. So he is my number 4 cornerback of this draft class. Now I'm throwing it to you, John. Who is your number 4 cornerback in this class?
My number 4 corner is going to be Trent McDuffie out of Washington. And I'll say this, I think he's arguably the most versatile corner in this entire group. He can play both in the slot and outside at a really high level. He's 5'11", so a little bit on the shorter side compared to most of the corners that we're probably going to both have in our top 5. But still really great height. It's fine. It's not going to be that big of a problem until you start matching up with like the Mike Evans of the world. But that's even, going to be a pretty rare opportunity for any corner in the NFL level. And no matter how big you are, people are going to struggle with Mike Evans. Anyway, although his size isn't elite by any means, I think that his versatility is, like I said, he can play in the slot and he can do it at a really high level, great in zone coverage, great in man coverage. He can play on the outside. We've seen him do both. The biggest issues I have with him is I think that he's not amazing in press, doesn't really get the opportunity to really, reroute the wide receiver at the line of scrimmage. He didn't do it a lot in college. He often was playing the bail technique where he just, the moment the ball is snapped, he's backing up and he's not trying to reroute the receiver. That might be because of scheme. That might be because of his limitations. I don't know. That's a fixable thing. You can gain strength in the NFL. So it's not like this is, some problem that's going to plague his entire career. But also, ultimately, I think that he's going to be a great corner no matter where he goes. Unlike any of these other guys, like I said, he can fit into any and every single NFL team because of his ability to play anywhere on the field. Or well, not anywhere on the field. I don't think I was able to see a lot of him playing at like safety or anything like that, but anywhere at the corner positions. And also, one of the things that I love the most about him is his willingness to play the run defense. He's very competitive when it comes to doing that. He seems to be enthusiastic about it, which is pretty rare for corners, which I think just helps when you put him in the slot because you know that if they do run to his side, he's willing to get down and dirty. But like I said, I think that his strength, maybe his overall frame, I think that his length, he doesn't have the longest arms. Some of those things can be a little bit more physically limiting, but regardless, absolutely a first round talent, absolutely going to be an amazing corner at the NFL level. So Trent McDuffie, he is my number 4. My number 3 is Andrew Booth Jr. from Clemson. The thing that really stood out to me about him is his competitiveness. When you talk about Derek Stingley, maybe you're questioning his motivation, his fire, all those kind of things. Andrew Booth Jr. to me was on the total opposite end of that spectrum to where it felt almost impossible to question it. He was always just in your face and going for it and excited. And regardless of how, the game was going, he had that sort of alpha dog mentality that he was the best player on the field, which is one of those things that we see at a lot of, the top corners. Richard Sherman in his prime, Jalen Ramsey right now. I think that's just sort of a mindset you have to really be a top corner in the NFL because you're playing a position in which you're heavily scrutinized and criticized for any play in which you get beat. And you're almost expected to have perfection, especially when you go up against, top elite receivers. So I think that he has the mindset and the willpower to just overcome any of that kind of stuff and really just win the mental battle on the field. But to go alongside it, he is, really solid frame, 6 foot, 194 pounds. So he's got the ideal size that you typically get out of a corner. He's great outside. He's pretty good in man. His zone was good, not great. We didn't see a ton of it. I wish I could have seen more film of him playing zone. But I don't think he's not bad at it. He just wasn't like elite, jumping off the charts. And that's simply because I think he was maybe sometimes just a little slow to react to receivers coming into his zone and more so looking to play the ball if it was thrown. He wanted to go out and get that interception as opposed to playing the greatest coverage. But regardless, I think that once again, first round talent, going to be a great corner at the NFL level. And anything that you want out of your number 1 corner when it comes to the intangibles, I think that he has it. So Andrew Booth Jr., that is my number 3. How about you?
All right, so my number 3, you've already mentioned him, is Mr. Trent McDuffie out of Washington. My comps were kind of, at least ceiling-wise, Chris Harris Jr., Casey Hayward, Desmond King-ish, like you mentioned. I mean, and maybe I don't want to throw this expectation out there, but like a Jair Alexander-ish, where, yeah, you mentioned, I mean, if he has to, he can play anywhere. His speed and especially acceleration and change of direction, were, I dare say, top-notch of this class. Really just all over everybody. You mentioned the mentality of he plays bigger than his size, definitely. And then you mentioned, press bail was kind of what he played. And once again, we don't know if that's all he can do or what he was just asked to do. But in regards to playing off coverage, he was like I just mentioned, he was really damn good at it because of his speed and agility and ability to change directions quickly. He has very good hips and feet that way. Like I said, I think he could be fine on the outside. Like I mean, there's only like maybe a few receivers that will really give him trouble. So yeah, I have him at number 3. It's really tough though because, like you mentioned, it just depends on how it's really with all these corners, but mainly him too. It depends on how teams use them, how they want to use them. But like you mentioned, he's the most versatile piece amongst the corners, and I think here on out, I think the rest of these guys are like a slam dunk at this point, where like they're at least going to be adequate cornerbacks. But especially McDuffie, I think he's going to have a barring anything crazy, a good long career. So he is my number 2. Trent McDuffie out of Washington. And
number 3.
Sorry, number 3. My apologies. Now I'm jumping to my number 2, which is Mr. Jalen or Moore Davis out of Alabama. Very good size and also good speed, but obviously, as you expect out of pretty much anybody that comes out of Alabama, very well coached and versed in his techniques and the nuances of corner, zones and how to pass guys off and such. Was taught and has very good press ability, very good at getting his hands on, like you mentioned, that something McDuffie struggled with, moving guys at the line of scrimmage off their routes. And then obviously, too, like with Alabama, going to have to play man, same thing in NFL. Very good at change of direction. Not obviously a McDuffie level, but, this is a bigger guy. You can't have everything. So I liked that. He could play in the slot. I see him more as a boundary type guy. I think that's what he'll excel most. He's more of a cover corner than a playmaker. I think he's not going to be a Trevon Diggs or J.C. Jackson type guy where he's going to get 7-8 interceptions. I don't think that's him. He's more of a cover guy where he's going to be on the guy, break up the pass, call it a day, or be on the receiver. Quarterback doesn't even look his way or throw his way. So yeah, only main concerns are obviously not really elite, speed or anything. It's just good enough to get by, I think, in the NFL level. And then obviously with any Alabama concern is this already the finished product we're seeing? If so, like I mentioned, I think he'll be fine. He'll be like maybe a Drake Kirkpatrick, where he was a solid corner for the duration of his NFL career, which isn't bad. So, yeah, he is my number 2 cornerback. Comps: Xavier Howard, Marlon Humphrey-ish, guys who know how to use their length. May not be the quickest, but because of their long arms or just and their know-how, they stay in the receiver's hip pocket, make deflections. But obviously, Xavier's more of a playmaker. So, nonetheless, that's my number 2. John, who is your numero dos cornerback prospect?
My number 2 is Derek Stingley Jr., and I'm going to say this on the front end. This is entirely based off of his potential. I think that if he can get it right and get the motivation, get the whatever was going on the last couple of years right, I think he has the highest potential out of any corner in this year's class. He just has a lot of skills that I think are very comparable to a lot of top corners. Amazing in coverage. His ball skills feel very similar to Trevon Diggs, who is one of the best corners in recent history when it comes to intercepting passes. He doesn't really have any weakness in his coverage abilities. Really great in press. That's honestly ideally where you want him, is out on the boundary, pressing the opposing wide receiver. Just amazing in man coverage, not as good in zone as he is in man, but he's still very good at it. And oftentimes when he is playing in zone coverage, that's where he becomes the headhunter, looking for a big hit or getting an interception, trying to make a turnover happen. So I love all those things about him. But like you said, the biggest issue is just all the other stuff, the off the field stuff, the motivation, one game he looks like he's the best player in the draft, and the next game he looks like he just doesn't care about football. And the reason I have him this high, despite those things, is I'm giving him a little bit of a pass because I think that LSU became incredibly dysfunctional when Joe Burrow and Justin Jefferson, all these guys leave. Jamar Chase decides to sit out. Dave Aranda, the defensive coordinator, he gets hired to Baylor. So now there's coaching staff changes. Joe Brady leaves. And it's just Ed Orgeron. And I mean, the guy won a national championship, but I don't necessarily think that he was an elite head coach by any means. So I felt like the infrastructure sort of got torn away with just an absurd amount of players leaving for the draft or opting out. And so I give him a little bit of pass. Also, he had some injuries. So there was just some stuff in there that I'm giving him a pass for. But overall, I do think that he's a bit more risky compared to some of these other prospects, because like you said, there's just been a lot of guys that they have all the talent in the world, but it doesn't seem like they necessarily care about utilizing it or growing it or getting better, because it's one thing to have all this talent right now and from what you showed in college, but it's another thing to actually have it translate to the league. Like I said, I think if he can live up to his potential, I'm willing to put him in my number 2 corner. I'm not willing to put him at number 1 because of that, but the guy, he can be, the next elite corner if he can figure those things out. So Derek Stingley Jr., he is my number 2. But my number 1 is Ahmad Sauce Gardner from Cincinnati. Amazing name, by the way. Gotta love the nickname Sauce Gardner. But overall, I mean, he's just everything that you want in an outside corner. He's 6'3", so he's massive when it comes to size. His 40 time wasn't necessarily incredible, but with the length that he has, the height, just the overall frame, the strength that he plays with, he's just a very, very, very good corner. I know it's a really obvious comparison because of the size, but Richard Sherman, you get shades of him in the ways that they play, both amazing in zone coverage, both have that big frame, that long length. And I think that if you put Sauce Gardner in a situation, even in a defense that plays that Seattle scheme where he can just be that corner on whatever side they put him on and you let him do his thing, I think that he's going to excel at the next level. You give him a defensive coordinator who's willing to use him in the ways that, Dan Quinn was using Richard Sherman. He's going to have instant success at the NFL level. He's not going to play in the slot, and that's large part because of his frame, and just everything that he's really strong at doesn't necessarily translate to the slot. But that doesn't really matter when you have a guy who can go out on the outside and lock up the opposing number 1 receiver. I mean, his stats in college are just absolutely insane. He never allowed a single touchdown in his entire college career. And guess what, people? I know you're going to say, well, he played for Cincinnati. Well, he covered Jameson Williams. He covered Chris Olave. He covered Garrett Wilson. He covered a lot of these guys that were, people have as consensus top 5 wide receivers in this draft. So using that as an excuse, I don't really buy it when it comes to the whole competition thing, because Cincinnati, they played a lot of the big time teams during his time there, and he still was just absolutely absurd, even against all those talented players. So Ahmad Sauce Gardner, yeah, I mean, he's the number 1 corner in this class, and I fully expect him to go top 10.
Yeah, I'm basically right with you. I mean, Cincinnati doesn't get as far as they do without having a talented roster. So yeah, spoiler, Sauce Gardner is also my number 1, just to add on to what John mentioned. Great in man and zone. Even if he doesn't get into Seattle scheme, I think he's like I said, probably even a safer block as, in terms of NFL success than McDuffie. Like you mentioned, his length, very good, knows how to use that, knows how to press, great reactions and anticipation too, which only makes it tougher on the offense because he's just so good. I mean, the only criticisms, just an average tackler, but once again, maybe NFL level didn't coach that up, or, I mean, he's not terrible. It's not a liability. So, I mean, that's overlooked, and I'm overlooking that. And then, like you mentioned, probably strictly more of an outside guy. Maybe if, maybe critical down, you put him on a Kelsey or, a star tight end if they don't have anyone that concerns you. But, yeah, got shades of a Sherman that can play more man, or like a Ramsey or Marlon Humphrey. Once again, guys that have solid speed at their size, but also deceptive agility, and they can stay with, most, maybe not slot guys, but most guys on the outside with the quick change of direction and burst. Yeah, so he is my number 1 corner as well. So a little bit consensus there at the top of of our rankings. So yeah, and I think I forgot to note my guys in consideration, but other than that, those are our top 5 corners of this draft class. Was there anyone else you wanted to mention or throw in, John?
Sorry, I'm pulling up my list. I do want to give a shout out to Tariq Woolen from UTSA. I think that he's a pretty underrated corner that probably going to be a more 2nd, 3rd round guy, but I did like a lot of what I saw from him.
Yeah.
Also 6'3", by the way, so he's similar frame to Sauce Gardner.
The McCreary out of Auburn, I believe.
Roger McCreary.
I liked him. He, like I said, it was between him and Stingley for me at 5. And I just went with Stingley, like you mentioned, a little more, as we all know, more upside there. Which, I mean, that happens in the first round. I don't want to say he's not gonna go in the first round, because we've seen crazier things, and most of the time, the first round picks are guys that are more based on projection than than a solid product. So we'll see what happens, how the cornerback draft, cornerback wise, falls out.